Okay, so now say you're at the end of your session. You've done all the editing, you've done all the mixing, you're ready to output. And if you're used to video editing, you're used to maybe going up to export media or maybe using Adobe Media Encoder. In Pro Tools is called a bounce. You're going to bounce your session to a stereo track. So for example, here we have our video track. And then we've got a dialogue track, a VO track, a music track, 2 FX tracks, and then actually we have got this audio track here that I'm going to delete. Just right click on it, hit delete. That was from a previous session that I was working on with the class. So yes, so basically what you want to do is this. First, the way a bounce works is that the bounce will only include audible tracks. So up here we have our track window, right? So one thing you might not have noticed is that there's all these little dots next to each track. This is the video track because it's got a little film icon. This is the dialogue track, and then we have something that says working dialogue, and the dot is grayed out. Do we see it? No, that means it's hidden. So check this out. Boom. That's been sitting there the whole time, muted. So it's always important before you bounce your tracks to make sure that you don't have any hidden tracks. See all that? I just hit a bunch of tracks because what could happen is you could have tracks that are hidden and not muted, and then when you bounce it, you'll be like, whoa, it sounds like I've got 20 tracks here, but I only have 3. Well, when you look at your track window, it looks like there are a few that are hiding. So all you have to do is hit the little button right there to bring them back up again. Now this working dialogue track was basically just basically some scratch audio. I guess maybe the writer or somebody basically just sort of talked through the commercial lines for timing. And so basically the sound editor was able to then line up the real dialogue to the scratch audio dialogue. So it was just there as a placeholder, but we don't need it anymore. So we could delete it, or we could just mute it and then hide it, which is what we're gonna do. We don't need it, might as well mute it, might as well hide it. But if we ever do want to find it again to do something with it, it's right there and we just have to unhide it. Okay, so these are all the audible tracks we want. And then basically we want to make sure that these are output. So output, 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 output. So basically all these have to be going to the same output. If this was going maybe to a bus, like say like bus 5, 6, then this one would not get output with the rest of them. They all have to be going to the same output, and that's because that's just how it works. It's a routing issue. So you have to make sure your outputs are all lined up, going to the same place. Because you might have some tracks in there that were just sort of I don't know, maybe just reverb tracks. We'll get into that later, but maybe you don't want to bounce those. So those could be still there going to a different output. But in this case, it's a very simple project. We just want these outputs going to gonna get bounced to a stereo track. And then this is basically a 30-second commercial, but we have a couple seconds sort of in the beginning just of nothing, which we want to include as well because that's how the project came to us. So what you do is you hit return, and that goes to the very first frame of the session. And remember how you get to the last frame of the session? You hit option return. See that? See, so now the cursor is at the very last frame. See that? So let's go back to the beginning, hit return, and now we need to select what we want to bounce. So we hit option shift return, and look, we have now selected from the very first frame to the very last frame. And now we've got our output paths, we've got all our audible tracks selected, and now we have the section of our timeline selected that we want to bounce. So now all we have to do is go up to File, down to Bounce To, and bounce to disk. Now we could bounce to QuickTime, and what that does is it basically bounces it to a QuickTime movie with video, which you could do. However, more often than not, you'll be getting a lower resolution video file to mix to. So you could bounce this back to a QuickTime movie that somebody could watch. That's fine, but only do that if that's requested. A lot of times you're just going to be bouncing it back to a stereo audio file so the picture editor can place that back in to their Premiere or Media Composer timeline, and then they can export that as the final 4K awesome output or whatever format they're doing. So only do a QuickTime bounce if you are cool with outputting a lower resolution video file with your mixed soundtrack, or if that's what is requested of you by the director or producer. In this case, we're just going to bounce to disk. So bounce to disk. So bounce source, see, remember how I said the output? Everything is going out of my Scarlett output, which is this right here. See, output, output, output. File type, remember, WAV is what we want. I could make an MP3 file as well. Not going to, because unless I want to listen to it on my iPod or something, I don't see a reason to do that. File format, remember this? Interleaved. Interleaved is a one stereo file. Multiple mono, you'll get a left and a right file that will basically play parallel to each other, creating a stereo sound, but they're actually two mono files. That would be multiple mono. Again, go by what the picture editor or producer has told you. More often than not, you'll just want to do interleaved. 24-bit, that's how it came in, that's how it's going out. 48 kilohertz sample rate, same thing. And then file name, let's just call this Ugly Duckling. Bounce, and then today's date, which is the 14th. Okay, and where do I want to put this? Always good to know where you're going to put stuff. Good. I myself like to keep it in the bounced files folder. So there it is, bounced files. It goes in there, keeps everything nice and tidy. And this right here, offline. I like keeping this check. It does not output or export or bounce a lower quality or offline quality version of your audio. It just bounces it faster. Pro Tools has a thing where if you want to listen to it as it's being bounced, it'll bounce it in real time, second by second, so you can listen to it, which is sometimes a good thing to do if you want to give it one final listen while it's bouncing, and then when you deliver it, you could say, hey, I listened to it as it bounced, it all sounded great, good to go. Also good to listen to as it bounces in case maybe something, oh my god, you forgot about adding this one effect, or oh, I never noticed that before. It's one final check. By keeping this unchecked, you will listen to the bounce as it's happening. Let's just do that for a little bit just so you can see. So bounce.
I checked that already, sir. It's making a sound like
see, it's bouncing in real time.
Yes. What?
This is the version with a lot of reverb. That's funny. So if you want to do the quick way, I'm just going to cancel this. Go back up here, export, bounce to disk. Everything stays the same, except now I'm going to make it offline. Bounce. Boom. There it is. Let's go to our Finder window. Okay, here we go. So, bounced files. There it is right there. And if I listen to it,
I I checked that already, sir. It's
There
making
it
me
is.
sound like
Let's listen to that reverb.
no. Yes.
That's a little
And then
much,
it's-
but that's how you know I got it. And for those who are curious, if you did want to do a QuickTime one, bounce to QuickTime, check it out. It's the exact same window, except now we have include video. So if I uncheck it, then it's just a normal bounce to disk. If I check it, it's a bounce to disk that is attaching it to the QuickTime video. So let's do this, and I'll call this video. It's going to go to the same folder. Wow. Okay, so let's see what that looks like. Okay, here we go. Here it is with the video. Looks like a pretty low-res version. It was a pretty low-res version video to begin with. That's what we were given, so excuse the poor quality, but here it is.
I checked that already, sir. It's making a sound like no. Yes. What? And then it's making sort of a boom.
And there you go. And then last but not least, after this is all done, if you're satisfied with what you're done and you're finished with the project for now, you want to make a backup. So yeah, always save it. Maybe save it as Ugly Duckling 3, or better yet, create a copy on another disk. So save copy in. It basically will save a copy with all your audio files and your movie files. You just kind of want those two, and maybe any plugins that you used, to basically a specified folder. So let's see. I've got an external hard drive, so I am just gonna say copy of Ugly Duckling 2 here. And what that does is it creates a literally copy of everything in your session folder to another drive. So it's always good after you do a bounce. Usually that signifies the end or the near end of a project, to save a copy in. Save copy in, and basically create an additional copy of it in another folder. That's it for now. And yeah, just keep checking back for more tips and tricks with me, Kenneth Thomas.